A Spring Evening by Georg Trakl. Come evening, a friend who surrounds my thought with darkness, gliding on paths through soft green sowing. Also willows beckon solemnly and calmly. A beloved voice whispers in the branches. A tranquil wind floats beautiful things here from somewhere, scant of the foliage which silvery touches you. In the hazel bush the blackbird makes music, a shepherd's song gives answer from the fires. How long the small houses disappeared, where now a birch copse gushes. The pond bears a lonely consolation, and shadows surrounding silently in the goldenness. And time is so miraculous, that one looks for angels and human glances which delight in innocent play. Yes, time is so miraculous. A Chord by Georg Trakl. Very bright tones in the thin wind, they sing the distant morning of this day that makes us dream after never felt showers, completely filled with unimaginable smells. Like mementos to lost companions, and quite echo of delight sunken in night, the foliage falls in the long ago abandoned gardens, which sun themselves in the silence of paradise. In the bright mirror of the clarified floods, we see the dead time strangely animate itself, and our passions in the bleeding lift our souls to more distant heavens. We go through deaths newly transformed, to deeper tortures and deeper delights, and the unknown deity governs, and we are completed by eternally new suns. Age by Georg Trakl. An animal face in the brown green glows shyly to me, the bushes smolder. Here far away an old fountain sings with children's voices. I listen there, while jackdaws mock me, and all around the birches wail themselves. I stand silent before a wheat fire, and softly pictures paint themselves on it, an ancient fairy tale of love on golden ground. The clouds spread the silence on the hill. On the ghostly pond mirror, fruits beckon, shining and heavy. A long waltz by Georg Trakl. An old path goes along, near wild gardens and lonesome woods. 1,000-year-old yews shudder in the rising falling chant of the wind. The moths dance as if they would die soon, the glance strings weeping the shadows and lights. 5 women's faces float ghostly painted in the blue. A smile trembles in the sunshine, meanwhile I slowly stride on. Unending love gives escort, quietly the hard rock greens. Always Darker by Georg Trakl. A wind which moves purple treetops as God's breath that comes and goes. The black village rises before the forest, these shadows are laid over the field. Meagerly the valley dusk, below and silent for the humble. A seriousness greets in garden and hall at once to finish the day. Piously and darkly an organ sound, marries enthroned by in blue vestment, and cradles her babe in hand. The night is starlit and long. An Evening by Georg Trakl. In the evening the sky was overcast, and through the grove full of silence and grief a dark golden shower went. Distant evening bells faded away. The earth drunk ice water, at the forest edge a fire lay glowing. Wind quietly sang with angels' voices, and shivering I have gone to the knee in the heather in bitter cresses. Far outside clouds swam in silver puddles, desolate guards of love. The heath was lonesome and unmeasured. At Night by Georg Trakl. The blueness dies out in my eyes tonight, red gold of my heart. How still the light burns. Your clock of sadness encircles the long descent. Your red lips seal your friends are nigh. At the Cementary by Georg Trakl. Rotten stone towers sultry warmed. Yellow haze of incense hovers. We some chaotically swarm in the flower trellises shake. Slowly a breath stirs where by the sun-still walls. Dwindles glimmering like it is seen. Songs of the dead deeply shither away. Long it listens after in the green, lets the bushes shine brighter. Brown swarms of mosquitoes prey over old tombstones. At the Moor by Georg Trakl. Wander in the blackened wind. Dry reeds whisper in the stillness of the moor. A column of savage birds ensues in the dawning sky. Over murky waters they cross. Uproar. By the crumbling shack the black wings of rot flutter up. Crippled birches sigh in the wind. Evening in the forsaken tavern, where Hauser shrouded by the tender sadness of a grazing herd. Night becomes manifest, doubts emerge from the silver water. Autumn by Georg Trakl. In the evening, in the bells ring peace, I follow the wonderful flights of birds, that in long rows, like devout processions of pilgrims, disappear into the clear autumn vastness. Wandering through the garden closed for the night, I dream after the brighter destinies, and hardly feel the motion of the hour hands. As I follow a journey over the clouds, and the breath of Tisea makes me tremble, a bird complains in the folded branches, a twine sways on rusty trellises. Meanwhile, like the deaf dances of pale children around dark fountain edges of the weather, shivering blue asters bend in the wind. Autumnal Homecoming by Georg Trakl. Memory, buried hope, is preserved by this brown timber. Dahlias hang over it. Evermore silent homecoming, a dark reflection of childish years by the desate garden. Where tears fall from blue eyelids, irresistible. Gloom's crystalline minutes gleam over to the night. Before sunrise, by Georg Trakl. In the dark many bird voices call. The trees and the springs murmur noisily. In the clouds a rose-colored glow sounds like early love's distress. The night blues away. With shy hands the twilight softly polishes the love layer, feverishly stood up, and lets the drunkenness of language kisses end in dreams, smiling and felt half awake. Birth by Georg Trakl. These mountains, black in the silence and snow. A red hunter climbs down from the forest, and the moosey gaze of the wild thing, the peace of the mother, under black, the sleeping hands open by themselves, and the cold moon seems ready to fall. The birth of man, each night blue water washes over the rock base of a cliff. The fallen angel stars, with sighs, something pale wakes up in a suffocating room. The eyes of a stony old woman shine, 2 moons. The cry of a woman in labor, the night troubles the boy's sleep with black wings, with snow, which falls with ease out of the purple clouds. Blood Guilt by Georg Trakl. Night threatens at the bed of our kisses. Somewhere a whisper, who absolves your guilt. Still trembling from the sweetness of Nephros lust, we pray, forgive us, Mary, in your mercy. Out of flower vases greedy scents climb, wheedling our forwards pale with guilt. Exhausting under the waft of sultry air we dream, forgive us, Mary, in your mercy. And the well of the sirens rushes louder, and the Sphinx rises darker before our guilt, so to our hearts sound again more sinfully. We sob, forgive us, Mary, in your mercy. By a Window by Georg Trakl. Above the roofs the sky blue, and clouds passing by. With a window a tree in spring dew, and a bird shoots up skyward drunk, and lost scant of blossoms. A heart feels this is the world. The stillness increases and the midday glows. My God, how rich is the world! I dream and life flees, life there outdoors, somewhere, far off to me because of a sea of lioness. A heart feels it and doesn't become glad. Childhood Memory by Georg Trakl. The sun shines alone in the afternoon, and quietly the tone of a honeybee's wavers off. In the garden the sisters' voices whisper. If the boy listens in the wooden shed, still fevering over book and picture. There the linden trees wilt immersed in the blue, a heron hangs motionless droned in the other, where the fence fantastic shadow shapes play. The sisters go quietly into the house, and soon white clouds glimmer vaguely from bright rooms, and confused the bushes bastardize down. The boy strokes the cat's hair, bewitched by the mirror of her eyes. An organ sound far away on the hill lifts wonderfully into heaven. Closing Chord by Georg Trakl. The last pale light went from the day, the early passions have rustled down. The holy wine of my joy spilled, now my heart weeps in the night and listens. After the echo of its young celebrations, which trails off so placidly in the dark, so shadowy, like wilted leaves falling on an abandoned grave in autumn night. Colorful Autumn by Georg Trakl. The fountain sings, the clouds stand in clear blueness, white delicate. Silent people wander thoughtfully down there in the evening blue garden. The ancestress marble has turned grey. A line of birds strakes into the distance. A fawn with dead eyes gazes on shadows that glide into darkness. Leaves fall red from the old tree, rotate inside through the open window. The room glows and dark fires in its shadows like ghosts. Opal smoke weaves over the grass. A cloud of wilted, bleached scans, in the fountain the sickle moon shines like a green glass in freezing air. Daydreaming by Georg Trakl. Soft life grows in the stillness, step and heart hurries through the green, loving stares at hedges that heavily fill up with scents. Beach ponder, the moist bells fell silent, the fellow sings, fire embraces darkness, our patient and mute rejoicing. Beautifully animated silent night still gives glad courage to the end. Golden wine offered by her sister's blue hands. December by Georg Trakl. At evening jugglers travel through the forest on quaintain wagons, small steeds. A golden stash seems locked in clouds, and white plain villages are painted. A wind swings shield and builded black and cold. A raven follows the morrow's comrades. On the sky a ray falls on bloody gutters, and placidly a funeral procession pilgrimages to the cemetery. A shepherd's hut dwindles nearby in the grey, and the pond brilliance of old treasures glistens. The farmer sat down in the tavern for wine. A worker lied shyly to a woman. One still sees the sexton in the vestry, and residue tells is beautiful and dim. Devotion by Georg Trakl. Not lost from my young years, a silent devotion to a sound of bells, to old churches' dusking altars, and the blue domes heaven-wide. To an organ's tune at evening, to wide squares fading in darkness, and to a fountain that splashes softly and quietly and sweetly like unintelligible children's babbling. I see myself dreaming silently, folding the hands and whispering prayers forgotten for a long time, and early gloom sombering my glance. Since the woman's picture gleams out of confused shapes, wreathed by sinister grief, and pours into me the chalice of nefarious shudders. Die sunflowers by Georg Trakl. You golden sunflower tenderly inclined toward death, you sisters full of humility, in such stillness, hellion seer of mountainous coldness ends. Venice drunken forehead pales from kisses mid those golden flows of gloom, the spirit is determined by silent sinisterness. Downfall by Georg Trakl. Over the wide pond the savage birds draw away. At twilight an icy wind blows about our star. The split forehead of night bends across our graves. Under oaks we shudder on a silver barge. Forever ring the whitewashed walls of the city, and the dome of thrones on my brother we climb, blind our hands to midnight. Dusk by Georg Trakl. You are rumpled, distorted by every pain, and shake with the discord of all melodies. You burst harp, a poor heart, on which gloom-sick flowers bloom. Was ordered the enemy, the murderer for you, that still the last spark of your soul, or makes the scanty world godless to a whore, ugly ill, pale with putrefaction. From shadows a wild dance that swings to frizzly ruptured, soulless sound, and round dance around beauty's fawn wreath, which riveringly crowns the lost winner, a bad trophy for that fond desperation, and that does not reconcile the bright divinity. Encounter by Georg Trakl. A stranger on the way, we look at each other, and our tired eyes ask, "What have you done with your life?" Be silent, leave all laments. Already it becomes cooler around us. The clouds dissolve in the vastnesses. I think we shall ask more no longer, and nobody will escort us to the night. Evening Song by Georg Trakl. At evening, when we walk on dark trails, our bleached selves appear before us. Thirsty we drink from the pond's white water, the sweetness of our mournful childhood. There we rest beneath the elderberry to behold the dawning gulls. Spring clouds rise above the town's dark thoughts, mute amongst nobler days. As I took your tiny hands, your round eyes gently broke upon me. This was long ago. And yet when darker songs descant upon the soul, you appear, a whiteness, in your friend's autumn landscape. Evening Walk by Georg Trakl. I go into the evening, the wind jogs along and sings. You are bewitched by the delight of feel what struggles with you. A dead woman's voice that laughed speaks. Poor is the fool's sad, forget what clouds the soul. The becoming shall be your pain. Fairy Tale by Georg Trakl. Rockets drizzle in the yellow sunshine, or the mask-like throng in the old park. Landscapes are mirrored in the grey sky, and sometimes one hears the fawn scream dreadfully. Its golden grin appears gracefully in the grove. And crests the bumblebee thick of battle clamours, a rider trots past on a solemn white horse. The poplars glow and vague arose. The girl who drowned in the pond today rests as a saint in the bleak room, and the glimmer of clouds often blinds her. The old people go into the hothouse dully and ill, and water the flowers which wither. At the gate voices whisper, dream confused. From the Still Days by Georg Trakl. So ghostly are these late days, just like the look of sick people sent here in the light. I have the night shades a mutant lament of their eyes, towards which they already turn, will probably smile and recall the celebrations, how one is moved with the songs half forgotten, and searches words for a sad gesture which already grows pale in silence unmeasured. So the suns the place around them flowers, and lets them shiver in the thin clay airs with deaf cool delight. At first whisper and darkens, and more deaf nightly the woodpecker's hammering echoes, just like a reverberation from airless crisps. Hohenburg, by Georg Trakl. The house is empty, fallen the room, the moon's lone glow, and the birth at the edge of the dawning woods. Forever your thoughts turn to the ashen face of your people, removed from the bedlam of time. And the dreamer green branches bend eagerly, cross and even. With burnished arms his star envelopes the song of songs, towards the unpeopled window it askance. Thus the stranger shudders in blackness, as his eyelids gently recede over the far-off one, the silver voice of the wind in the hallway. Homecoming, by Georg Trakl. When the evening breath's golden rest falls in dark meadow before which man is a locker, a shepherd dwelling in flock's dusking stillness, the patience of the red beeches, so clearly since it has become autumn, that the hill the lone one listens to the flight of birds, the dark meaning and the shadows of the dead have gathered more seriously around him. Cool minonette's scent fulfills him with shudders, the hearts of the villagers the elder, when in former times a child dwelt. Memory, buried hope, is preserved with these brown rafters, at which dahlias hang, so that their hands strive after them. And the brown garden, the shimmering step, forbidden loving, dark year, where from blue eyelids the tears of a stranger fell irresistibly. From brown tree-tops dew drips, when with one a blue deer awakes on the hill, listening to the loud call of a fisherman by the evening pond, to the false cry of the bats. But in golden stillness the drunken heart dwells, full of its noble death. Hour of Grief, by Georg Trakl. Blackish the step follows the gleaming moon in the autumnal garden. The immense night sinks by the freezing wall. Our thorny hour of grief. Silverly the candlestick of the lonely one flickers in the dusking room, dying away, and one thinks at darkness, and bends the stony head over the perishable, drunk from wine and nightly harmonies. The ear always follows the soft lament of the blackbird in the hazel bushes. Dark Rosario, who are you, lonesome flute, forehead, bent over sinister time's freezing? I, by Georg Trakl. A paleness resting in the shadow of these sage staircases. It rises at night in silver guise, and wanders under the cloister. In coolness of a tree and without pain, with perfect breaths, and does not need the autumnal stars, fawns over which we ever falls. Lovers ponder long after his sad fall. In darkness, by Georg Trakl. In the blue spring the soul falls silent. Under dripping branches the evening allows both their foreheads unshivered. Of a chording cross, in sunless communion man and woman awoke to each other. By the barren wall the deserted one wanders with the shifting stars. Over the moon-stricken paths in the woods the wilderness of forgotten hunts sinks even deeper. A grief rises up of the crumbling rock face in mutiny. In red foliage full of guitars, Georg Trakl. In red foliage full of guitars, the girl's yellow hair waves at the fence where sunflowers persist. A golden chariot steers through the clouds. In brown shadows the ancients grow dumb and dumbly entwine. The orphaned ones sing whispers sweetly, flies hum in the yellow haze. In the stream the woman wash, the hung linen undulates. The little girl, long dead to me, returns throughout the dawning night. While the tender sky sparrows fling themselves into green holes pregnant with rot. The hungry are filled with the ghost of bread and spices. In the east, by Georg Trakl. Like the wild organs of a winter storm was the people gloomy rage, the purple billow of battle of stars leaf striped. With broken bows, silvery arms, the night beckons to dying soldiers. In the autumnal ash trees shade, the ghosts of the killed are sighing. Thorny wilderness surrounds the town. From steps that bleeds the moon drives off dumbfounded woman. The wild wolves have burst through the gate. In the Moonlight, by Georg Trakl. An army of vermin, mice, rats romps in the hallway which shimmers in the moonlight. Wind cries out as if in dream and whimpers. In the window the shadows of small leaves quiver. Occasionally birds twitter in the branches, and spiders creep on the bleak wards. Through empty ways pale specks shudder, and quaint silence dwells in the house. In the courtyard light seemed to float on pured wood a sage junk. And his duck listens in a black pool. Statues still stand there from old times. One still sees counters from other things, and the writing faded on rotten signs. Also perhaps the colour of cheerful pictures, angels singing before Mary's throne. In the Spring, by George Trakl. Your black footsteps whisper into the snow. In the shadows of trees your rosy eyelids flutter out of love. Forever follow the dark halls of the marina, the night and the stars, and the oars pulse faintly. Before long the violets bloom by the crumbling wall, the temple of the deserted correlates in the silence. In Venice, by George Trakl. Stillness in the passing night of a room. 7 silver branches flicker before the whispering song of a deserted, a mystic flock of roses. A swarm of flies, black as smoke, swallows up the stony space, and from the anguish of golden days the head of a homeless child gazes back. A frozen sea fills with night. The one star on the dark journey have vanished in the ditch. Child, your ailing smile haunts me wordless in sleep. In Wine Country, by George Trakl. The sun paints courtyard and walls of autumn, the fruit stacked in heaps all around. Before them poor children cower. A gust thins out old linden trees. Through the gate the golden shower rains, and woman blessed with child tiredly rest on rotten benches. Drunkyards swing glasses and jugs. A hoodlum lets his fiddle sound, and smokes as well lustfully in the dance. Roughly brown bodies embrace. From windows empty eyes gaze, stand rises from the fountain's mirror. And black they say depart at the hills of vine's dusk all around. A migration of birds glide swiftly southwards. Justice, by George Trakl. Huts of childhood are in autumn, decayed hamlet, dark shapes, singing mothers in the evening wind, at windows anglers and hands fold. Still birth, from green ground, mystery and stillness of blue flowers. Insanity opens the purple mouth. Dies irae, grave in stillness, groping along green thorns, and with sleep, blood vomit, hunger and laughter. Fire in the village, awakening in the green, fear and swaying on gurgling boat. On wooden staircase again, the white shadow of a strange woman leans, poor sinner longing away in the blueness, and let his purification behind the lilies and rats. Kaspar Hauser's song, by George Trakl. He truly loves the purple sun, descending from the hills, away through the woods, the singing blackbird and the joys of green. Sombre was his dwelling in the shadows of a tree, and his face undefiled. God the tender flame spoke to his heart, O son of man. Silently a step turned to the city in the evening. A mysterious complaint fell from his lips. I shall become a horseman. But bush and beast did follow his ways to the pale people's house and garden at dusk, and his murderers sought after him. Spring and summer, and how so beautiful, the fall of the righteousness. His silent steps passed by the dark rooms of the dreamers. At night he and his star dwelt alone. He saw the snow fall on bare branches, and in the murky doorway the assassin's shadow. Sylvan sank the unborn's head. Lament, by George Trakl. Sleep and death, the dusky eagles around his head swoop all night long. Eternity's icy wave would swallow the golden image of man. Against horrible reefs his purple body is shattered. And the dark voice laments over the sea. Sister of stormy sadness, look at Timidai goes down on the stars, the silent face of the night. Landscape, by George Trakl. September evening. The sombre calls of herdsmen float across the dimming village. Molten metal sparks in the blacksmiths. A massive horse rears darkly back. To the fervor of its blazing nostrils, the hyacinth curls of a servant girl cling. At the edge of the woods, a faint cry stiffens the deer's back, and the yellow flowers of autumn bend wordlessly over the pond's blue countenance. The tree was consumed in red flame. Up flutter the dark faces of bats. Luminous Hour, by George Trakl. Far on the hill flute sounds, fawns lurk in the marshes, where sluggishly the slender nymphs rest hidden in reed and seaweed. In the pond's mirror glass, golden butterflies ecstasies. Quietly an animal with 2 backs moves in the velvet grass. Sobbing in the birch grove, off his breath's tender laugh babble. Softly and jokingly the nightingales join in his song. Furious a flame glows, still Aphrodite's mouth, and drizzled from ambergris scant, the hour reddens darkly. Mankind, by George Trakl. Face to face of the fire abyss, thundering hoofs, the doomed brows of warriors. Across the blood-fog footsteps echo, the iron death knells, surrender, black and blue brains. Her eaves cloud and pursued, a passing hour in bleeding coins. Light breaks through the malignance, his last meal. The swelling silence dwells in bread and wine, and the 12 are cleaved. All night a wail in the dream span of the olive branches. St. Thomas plunges his hand into the heart of the wound. Melancholy, by George Trakl. The blue soul is mutely closed. The open window of a brown forest sings, the stillness of dark animals. In the valley the migrants, where the footbridge clouds rest outpoured, the golden strangers. A procession of steeds gallop red in the village, the garden brown and cold. The Esther friezes are delicately painted on the fence, the sunflower's gold almost flown away. The stumpest voices, dews poured out on the hard grass and stars white and cold. Seedeth painted in the dear shadow, and the contenance full of tears and closed. Mourning by Georg Trakl. The dark eagles, sleep and death, rustle all night around my head. The golden statue of man is swallowed by the ice comb of eternity. On a frightening reef the purple remains go to pieces. A dark voice mourns over the sea. Sister, in my wild despair, look. A precarious skiff is sinking under the stars. The face of night whose voice is fading. My heart at evening by Georg Trakl. Toward evening you hear the cry of the bats. The black horses pound in the pasture, the red maple rustles. A walk along the road sees ahead the small tavern. Nuts and young wine taste delicious, delicious to stagger drunk into the darkening woods. Village bells, painful to hear, echo through the black fire branches, dew forms on the face. Nature Theatre by Georg Trakl. Now I step through the slender gate. Promiscuous step in the avenues drifts away in quiet weft of words from people passers-by. I stand before a green stage. Begin again, you play of lost days, where crime and punishment, ghostly only, strange and cool. To the melody of the early days I see myself going up there again, a child whose quiet, forgotten lament I see weeping, strange to my understanding. Your wondering face turned to the evening was there once this that now makes me weep? Like your still unfinished gestures that point to the night mutely and shuddering. Night Song by Georg Trakl. Over nocturnal dark floods I sing my sad songs, songs which bleed like wounds. Ever no heart carries them to me again through the darkness. On the nocturnal dark floods rush sob my songs, songs which bleed from wounds, they carry them to my heart again through the darkness. On the death of an old woman by Georg Trakl. Often I listen full of horror at the door, and when I arrive it seems to me that someone fled, and her eyes see past me dreamily as if it would see me elsewhere. While she sits completely stopped in herself and listens, and seems far off from the things around her. Wherever she trembles, the noise rushes at the window, and then cries still, just like an anxious child, and caresses her white hair with tired hand, and asks with pale glance, "Must I go already?" And there's a crazy fever. The little light in the altar went out. Where do you go? What has happened? On the edge of an old water by Georg Trakl. Dark interpretation of a water. Stars in the mouth of the night. Sighing in black pillars the rosy shadow of men. Redness of autumn. Rustling of the maple in the old park. Chamber concerts which fade on the sage stairs. On the edge of an old well by Georg Trakl. Dark interpretation of water. Broken void in the mouth of the night. Boy's blue shadow sighing in black pillows, rustling of a maple, steps in the old park, chamber concerts which fade on a spiral staircase, perhaps the moon which quietly climbs the steps, the gentle voices of the nuns in the sage church, a blue tabernacle which slowly opens, stars which fall on your bony hands, perhaps a walk through abandoned rooms, the blue tone of flute in the hazel bushes, very quietly. Perfection by Georg Trakl. My brother, let us go more silent. The streets darken placidly, and the distance flags probably gleam and wave. However, brother, let us be alone, and rest looking at heaven, softly and wholly prepared in the heart, and oblivious to past dead. Brother, see the world is wide. Outdoors wind plays with clouds, they come like us from somewhere. Let us be like the flowers are, so poor, my brother, so beautiful and glad. Please, Georg Trakl, send your flames to the spirit, when it endures, imprisoned sighs in black midnight, near the spring hill, when the gentle lamp offers itself, the deepest pain endures. A love that rises in the heart like a round light and endures a soft shape, so that his earthen vessel breaks. Seventh Song of Death by Georg Trakl. So dawns the blue face of spring. Beneath the suckling trees a darkness strays into evening and dulness. The blackbird's feeble complaint is caught. The stifled night appears, a wild bleeding dirge burrowing deeper into the hillside. Flowering apple branches sway in the damp air, tangles unhinge their silver, death rattles over the night's fluttering eyes, clatter of stars, a whispering song from the cradle. Down to the blackened woods the sleeper, rising discandid, and the blue spring, it weaves its way through the valley, and those bleached eyelids receded wordlessly over the snow-covered face. And the moon hunted the red beast from its cave, and sighing it died, the bitter lament of woman. The white stranger luminous raised his hands to the one star. In silence the dead abandoned their ruined tenement. Of the blasted statue of man forgot out of loveless metals, night and horror in the sunken woods, and the crematory wildness of beasts, the windless eye of a soul. On the blackest barge he embarked down the shimmering currents, plenary of purple stars, and branches budding green sank upon him, poppy-born from a silver cloud. Silence, by Georg Trakl. Over the forest the moon gleams pale and makes us dream. Willow by the dark pond weeps soundlessly in the night. Distinguishes, and placidly the fogs flood and rise. Silence, silence. Sleep, by Georg Trakl. Not your dark poisons again, white sleep. This fantastically strange garden of trees and deepening twilight fills up the servants' night months as spiders' beds. Approaching stranger, your abandoned shadow in the red of evening is a dark pirate ship with salty oceans of confusion. White birds on the outskirts of the night flutter out over the shuddering cities of steam. Springtime of a Soul, by Georg Trakl. Flowers scattered blue and white aspire cheerfully upon the ground. Silverly the evening hour waves tepid wasteland loneliness. Life blooms dangerously now, sweet rest around cross and grave. A bell rings its length of time. Everything seems marvelous. A willow softly hovers in the other, here and where a flickering light. Spring whispers and promises, and the damp ivy trembles. Lushly bread and wine are green, the organ sounds full of a power of wonder. Around cross and passion a ghostly light gleams. How beautiful are these days! Children grow through the dusk, although the wind blows bluer, far away thrushes mock. Summer dawn, by Georg Trakl. In the green ever subtly a star flickers, and in the hospital they smell the morning. The thrush trills crazily hidden in the bush, and cloister bells go dream-like and far. A statue tows in the square, lonely and slender. In the courtyard red flower-beds dawn. The air around wooden balconies shakes with sultriness, and flies quietly reel around the stench. The silver curtain where before the window hides entwined limbs, lips, tender breasts. A heart hammering echoes from the tower scaffold, and the moon decays wide of the firmament. A ghostly dream court hovers away, and monks plunge from the church gate and stride lost in the infinity. In the sky a bright summit lifts. Summer, by Georg Trakl. At evening in the woods the cuckoos withhold their misery. The cornstalks slide deeper into themselves, the red poppies. The blackened sky cracks open over the hills. The ancient song of a cricket dies in the harbour. It never stirs a crown of a chestnut. Up the winding stairs your dress rustles. The candle's glowing silence darkens the room. Your silver hand quenches it. Tonight no wind, no stars. Sunny afternoon, by Georg Trakl. A branch rocks me in the deep blue. In a frolicking autumnal leaf tangle moths flicker, intoxicated and crazy. Explodes resound in the floodplain. My mouth bites into red berries, and light and shadow sway in the foliage. For hours golden dust falls crackling in the brown ground. The thrush laughs from the bushes, and frolic and loud the autumnal leaf tangle strikes together above me, fruits detach bright and heavy. The Deep Song, by Georg Trakl. From deep night I was released. My soul is astonished in immortality. My soul listens over space and time to the melody of eternity. Not day and lust, not night and suffering is the melody of eternity. And since I listen to eternity, I feel no more lust and suffering. The Dream of an Afternoon, by Georg Trakl. Be silent. The angst arrives, and the step dusk away again. Shadows float up and down, birches hanging in the window. On the old wine-hill the round dance of fauns romps anew, and the slender nymphs rise quietly from a fountain mirror. Here a far thunderstorm threatens, and sends steams from dark cresses, moths celebrate silent masses before decaying flower trellises. The Fall of the Deserted, by Georg Trakl. The dark fall swells with fruit and abundance, the yellow glare of garish summer days. A pure blueness steps from the ruined husk. Shadows fled from the ancient myth. The wine is pressed, when in silence fall the whispered reply to murky questions. And here and there cross on the barren hill. In red woods a flock loses itself. The cloud wanders into the pond's mirror. A passion's stormless gesture is put to rest. Below one's breath the evening wings of grief stir the dry reeds of our rooftop of the black earth. Before long the stars will nestle in his very brow, and the chilled room a mute humility turns back, and angels street softly from the blue eyes of lovers with more gentle ache. Reeds hiss, and bone-ridden horror dawns, black dewdrops from the shaven fields. The Horror, by George Trakl. I saw myself go through abandoned rooms. The stars danced crazily on blue ground, on the fields the dogs howled loud, and in the treetops the fawn rummaged wildly. But suddenly stillness, stuffy fever glow, its poison flowers bloom from my mouth, with the branches like from a wound, pale gleaming dew falls and falls and falls like blood. From the mirror's deceitful emptiness, a no slowly lifts in the vagueness out of horror and darkness Cain. Very quietly the velvet curtains rustle, through the window the moon looks as if into emptiness. There I am, alone, with my murderer. The Mood of Depression, by Georg Trakl. Your dark mouth inside me, you are strong, shape composed of autumn cloud and golden evening stillness. In the shadows thrown by the broken pine trees, a mountain stream turns dark in the green light. A little town with piously dies away into brown pictures. Now the black horses rear in the foggy pasture. I think of soldiers. Down the hill, where the dying sun lumbers, the laughing blood plunges, speechless, under the oak trees. Of the hopeless desperation of an army. A blazing steel helmet filled with clatter from purple foreheads. The autumn night comes down so coolly. With the white habit glittering like the stars of the broken human bodies, the convent nurse is silent. The Rats, by Georg Trakl. The hunter's moon cuts straight through the farmyard. The roof's edge is shadowed askance. Window empties itself without a word. Up the stairs, below one's breath, rats cavort. And the scuttling whistles here and there, and the grisly whiff of human stink gives you way. The ghost in the moonlight trembles through and through, and the bottomless greed tugs at you, and the houses and barns comply, pregnant with corn and fruit. In the dark out there, the ice wind thrashes and weeps. The Ravens, by Georg Trakl. Out of black receive at noon the ravens rush with rusty cries. Where shadows touch their deer's back, and at times their lumen gnarled rest. Ah, how they derange the brown stillness, and the one acre itself entranced, like a woman married to grave premonitions, and at times you can hear them bicker about a corpse they sniffed out somewhere, and sharply they bend their flight towards north, and dwindle away like a funeral march in the air, shivering with bliss. The Saint, by Georg Trakl. In the hell of self-created sufferings, cruelly indecent pictures plague him. No heart was ever so enchanted by lascivious prurience like his, no heart so tormented by God, at its gaunt hands, unredeemed praying to heaven. But only agonizedly insatiable lust forms his rutting, feverish prayer, its fervor surges there from mystical infinities. Not so drunkenly weary of Dionysus sounds, as if his shout of torment forces fulfillment in deadly, furiously sobbing ecstasy. Exaude me, O Mary. The Shadow, by Georg Trakl. Since I sat in the garden this morning, the trees stood abloom in blue, full of thrush-calls and trills. I saw my shadow in the grass, immensely disordered, a fantastical animal that lay before me like a bad dream. And I laughed and trembled very much. Meanwhile the fountain sang in the blueness, and the bud lit purple, and the animal went alongside. The Sun, by Georg Trakl. Each day the yellow sun rises over the hill. The woods glow, the dark beast, man, hunter or shepherd. Bloodfish surface in the teeming pond, and in the dome of heaven the fisherman drifts in his blue boat. The grapes ripen slowly, the corn. The day slumps to a close, good and evil are poisoned. Night falls. The wanderer lifts his heavy eyelids. The sun breaks from the dark ditch. To Lucifer, by Georg Trakl. Lend your flame to the spirit, glowing alone. Sighing the head rises into midnight. In greening spring hill, where before gentle lamb bled, endured the deepest pain. The dark one follows the shadow of evil, where lifts the moist wings to the golden disk of the sun, and the sound of bells convulses his pain-torn breast, wild hope, the sinisterness of flaming fall. To the Silenced, by Georg Trakl. Our great city's madness when at nightfall the crippled trees gape by the blackened wall, a spirit of evil peers from a silver mask. Lights with magnetic scourge drive off a stony night. Our sunken pealing of evening bells. Horror icy shivers sheds a stillborn child. With raving whips God's fury punches brows possessed. Purple pestilence hung over the break's green eyes. Our horror lava of gold. But silent in dark caves the stiller humanity bleeds out of hard metal's mouth the redeeming head. Towards evening, my heart, by George Trakl. A screeching of bats at evening, to horses loop in the meadow. The red maple shivers. To the wanderer a small tavern appears in the distance. It is good to taste young wine and nuts. It is good to lurk drunken into the dawning woods, tolling through the black tangle the dolorous bells, dewdrops on the face. Western Dusk by George Trakl. A fawn cry roams through sparks, in the park's cascades of light foam, metallic vapors around steel arcades of a city which rolls around the sun. A god race is shimmering in a harness of tigers past women in bright bazaars, filled with flowing gold and vase. Enslaved people howl now and when, and the candle a drunken ship rotates sluggishly in green solar sheaves. A cheerful concert of colors quietly rises before the hospital. Aquarium exhibits sinister splendor. In mirrors colorful crowds circulate on bridge arches and tracks. Before benches a demon wakes palely. A dreamer sees pregnant woman glide past in slimy brilliance. A dying man hears bells ringing. A golden stage glows quietly in the horror. Whispering into Afternoon by George Trakl. Son of autumn, thin and shy, a fruit drops off the trees. Blue silence fills the peace of a tardy afternoon sky. Deaf kneels forget of metal, and the white beast hits the mire. Brown lasses of choir dies in leaves drifting prattle. Brow of God dreams of hue, senses madness gentle wings. Round the hill wheel in rings, black decay and shaded views. Rest and wine and sunsets gleam, sad guitars drizzle into night. Into the mellow lamp inside you turn in as in a dream. Winter Evening by George Trakl. When snow falls against the window, long sounds the evening bell. For so many has the table been prepared, the house set in order. Home the wandering many come on dark paths to this gateway. The tree of grace is flowering in gold out of the cold sap of the earth. In stillness wanderers step in. Grief has worn the threshold into stone, but see, in pure light, glowing ware on the table, bread and wine. With the Young Wine by George Trakl. Sunsets purple, swallows already flown far off. On the arcs in the evening new wine goes around. Snow falls behind the mountain. Summer's last green drifts away, hunter comes from the forest. On the arcs in the evening new wine goes around. Snow falls behind the mountain, wind blows around the forehead. A stranger comes silently. On the arcs in the evening new wine goes around. Snow falls behind the mountain,